everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Dazzle Fly Podcast. I'm Caleb, as always, joined by my brother Joshua. Joshua, what's going on, man?
Hey, man, doing great. Just want to give a couple shout-outs before we intro this episode. First shout-out is to all the guys and girls that came down to Orvis Greenville on Saturday. We got to give a big shout-out right at the beginning to a little kid named Monty.
All right, tell me about Monty.
Monty was tying a fly in there with his dad, Joshua. Or Josh, happens to have a great name, you know. And they were tying a fly with Matthew, and Monty went today on a guided trip and caught a sweet fish on that fly.
That's awesome.
I've got a picture. So they sent me a picture of it. So big shout out to our man Monty for knocking out some cool fish today. And
yeah, way to go, Monty. That's really cool. Thanks to everyone who came.
Yeah, thanks to everybody who came and hung out. It was a cool day. Exciting day at Greenville Orvis.
Yeah, I was bummed I missed it.
But you got to go fishing today.
I did, yeah. It was a brief trip. We talk about that all the time, about keeping expectations realistic. And kids went out with me, both Rita and James. And Sally went with us. We took Sally's big lawn chair and a book to read. And the boys and I, they splashed in the water a little bit and got a little too cold, probably too quick. But they did catch, they both... James ended up reeling in, and Reed helped net 2 fish, and they had a good time. Took them out on the new Euro rod we got, the new G Loomis.
Like it.
And Reed did a pretty good job casting it.
Okay.
I was quite impressed. He gives you a run for your money, and so yeah, we had a good time. It was good. It was really good. Weather was perfect for a beautiful day in March, and they had just stocked it up there this week. So kids got to go get on some fish. We had a good time. I had to really work on managing expectations for after the trip, or towards the end of the trip, because it was a lot shorter than probably I hoped it would be.
Understand?
But it was still a really good time, and the boys had fun. We all had fun, and we sat around at the end of the night tonight, talked about our favorite part of the day, and that was both our favorite part of the day was going fishing with Dad. So that's always
success,
a win,
man.
Yeah.
Just want to give a couple other big shout outs. Thanks to our guys Brad and Brian. They sent us each one of these hats that I'm wearing tonight. So if you're on YouTube, I'm wearing this Storied Outdoors hat. So appreciate it, guys. They had a great episode this past week with Matt Lewis on the red eye bass, and then I got in this discussion with our buddy Scotty that came to Greenville, and now I'm kind of in the search of red-eyed bass. So we're trying to plan that red-eyed bass trip, but super cool.
You planning a trip?
Me and Scotty kind of was all over it. He was kind of wanting to plan it with me, so it's kind of cool. But yeah, man, a couple things we want to just talk about before we get this episode going. Number one, we're 2 weeks away. This week, we'll be 2 weeks away from our live show at Maggie Valley Fly Shop, March 16th, 6 o'clock, Frog Level Brewery. We'll have some Frog Level Brewery beers there and some coffee and some snacks, and just come hang out, meet Shannon and the gang at Maggie Valley Fly Shop, and then around 6:45, we're going to fire up the microphones and interview Jerry and hear all about Frogs Fanny floating, and also just, man, he's fished all over the country, all over the world. So just to hear from Jerry and how he has done his thing is going to be cool in person. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, man, I love it. I can't wait for the live night. I think it's going to be a really good time. So really looking forward to it. What else we got?
We got March 24th. We're going to be at Highland Brewery, F3T Film Festival. It's going to be a super fun night, man. That's going to be just really cool. We've already talked to some people about going to be there. So excited to see some films. Some that we've actually made I've actually made a friend with a guy who's got some films in it, so excited to see those. Excited to see all the films. It's going to be a sweet raffle package. Come out, hang out. It's a good time. It's a fun night. Highland Brewery, 7 o'clock. I think the doors open at 6, and the movie start at 7. So yeah.
That's awesome. Good stuff, man. Keeping the events coming.
That's about all we got for the rest of March.
That's awesome.
Other than some fishing, maybe, if we can squeeze some. It's going to get cold again this weekend, but
yeah, I was looking at that, and I'm not really excited about it.
I know. I was hoping to float next weekend.
Yeah, I've got the smallmouth itch.
I agree.
So I'm ready to go make that happen.
Sure.
I've been sitting behind the vise a lot lately, trying to get ready for that. So tying up a bunch of bugs, and I'm getting real weird about my fly boxes and trying to organize them all the right way. And so yeah,
we'll have to have a fly box organizing episode.
Yeah, we could totally do that.
An organization of fly fishing episode.
Yeah, we're probably not the guys to teach.
Probably not. But that's what it would be, though. It'd be us. So just real quick, also, guys, just want to say thanks. We got a great review this week on Apple Podcasts. Keep those reviews and ratings poured in for us. It really helps out our show. Also, The Patreon is still there. I'm working really hard on trying to get some bonus content from some of the YouTube clips, some of the behind the scenes screw ups that might be kind of entertaining. I'm trying to work on that this week. So keep those coming, man. We appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for listening to the show. Thank you for checking us out on Instagram or wherever you check us out. And just keep leaving that positive feedback. Tag us in your kids' pictures. We've got some spring kids' pictures coming out.
It's been great.
Tag us in those. We'll repost them. So that's what it's all about, man. But today we have a friend that we got to meet in Virginia, and tell everybody who our guest is today, Caleb.
Yeah, so on today's episode, if you're listening on the audio, you heard this already, but it's Mr. Eric Camfield of Altary Fly Fishing. Now, Altary is an amazing nonprofit organization. They do a lot of fishing retreats, and they do a lot of great things for they have a really special place in my heart for what they do. They have a really heart for pastors, and so they provide a lot of fly fishing retreats for pastors, get people connected to the water, and also more connected to just themselves. And you hear a lot about that in Eric. Eric talks a lot about what they do through Altary, and Eric's just a cool guy in general. He's got a really neat story that we're going to get into, from being a professional baseball player to finding fly fishing to being involved in ministry. And so I think that people are really going to enjoy this conversation.
Yeah, he gives some great dad tips in the episode too, and so he's got two kids that are really rocking it and doing their thing, and he's been a great dad to them. So it was a cool episode to talk to Eric. Not as much really about his fishing as much as about what he's done in his life and what Altary is all about. So really hope you guys enjoy this episode. Can't wait for some big episodes coming up in April. But this is going to be a great one. We appreciate you guys as always. And Caleb, anything else? Let's dive into this episode.
Let's dive into a conversation with Mr. Eric Camfield of Altary Fly Fishing. Well, hey, everyone, and thanks for joining us for another episode of the Dads on the Fly podcast. We are really excited tonight to interview and have a discussion with Mr. Eric Camfield of Altary Fly Fishing. Eric, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, guys. It's good to be with you.
Eric, man, we appreciate you taking some time for us. We got the wonderful opportunity to meet you in person. This is one of the rare guests we've actually met in person before we had on the show. We usually do that backwards.
And I still made the cut, which is pretty amazing.
Well, I was thinking we still made the cut. You wanted to be on the show.
So Eric made us in person and still wanted to come talk to us on the show. So that's
I think it's because of your wives and kids and all that.
That's what it was. That's
so.
why. Yeah. Listen, we should just bring them with us all the time because they definitely would probably get us way more guests. We'll just, have them make the phone calls and invite people to be on the show.
For sure. So Eric's been busy promoting out kind of at a bunch of shows, living the show life this winter, which is where we met him in person in Virginia. And Eric is the founder, is that correct?
Yep.
Of Altary Fly Fishing. So we're going to talk more about Altary Fly Fishing throughout the episode, of course. It's one thing we really were excited about learning about and have our listeners learn about. But first of all, Eric, man, you've got a kind of a cool past. And how did a fly rod enter into that story?
Yeah, that's a great question. I grew up fishing with my grandfather. We were fishing buddies, and it wasn't fly fishing. It was bobber fishing with wax worms and red worms, mostly for panfish and bass or whatever else would bite the hook. And so, I was doing that at age 3, 4, 5. My grandfather would wake me up early on a Saturday morning and he'd say, "Get up, Hoss, we're going fishing." And so I had a flannel shirt and this straw hat with an alligator that was on top. That was my fishing hat. And so, this was way before cell phone days. So we would leave at dawn and not come back till dark. And this is in Ohio. So that's like 9:30. My mom was worried, like, "What are you doing with my little boy?" And, and oftentimes I would just spend the night with my grandma and grandpa after we fished, because then we had to clean the fish. We had to fry some up and eat it late at night. And I just would say, "Mom, we were fishing." And so I wasn't a squirrely kid. Like, I was watching that bobber and fishing hard for 14, 15 hours, even as a little guy. But baseball, athletics, but baseball is a big theme of my life. And I had the opportunity to play collegiately and then professionally. But when I was in college, I traded in a gold chain that I wore at the pawn shop. We were always hanging out at this pawn shop, a gold chain for a fly rod that they had on the wall. And so I remember the first cast at, maybe 20 years old, 21, something like that. In the first cast, I was like, "Oh, I love this," and we went to lakes and stuff all around where our college was in Southeast Ohio. and catching fish. And so I was hooked from that point on. And then, so probably for the last 30 plus years, it's been a love and passion of my life. And the pendulum swung. I did a lot of bass fishing, a little competitive bass fishing, but I married into a fly fishing family, and it's been fly fishing really ever since, heavily for the last 20-25 years.
All right, my first follow-up has got to be, now that you know what you know about fly fishing, did the pawn shop do you right by your necklace there? Did you come out on top with that trade?
Good question. When it's your first fly rod, you don't really know any different anyway. Unfortunately, that first rod has now led to many rods.
Few more, right?
A few more.
And I told my wife, she asked me, she goes, "How many rods do you need?" And I said, "Just one more." And she goes, you said that last time." And I said, "Yep."
I think people don't know. My wife, likes different things. Like purses seem to be something we have more than one of, and I just use that same comparison.
She's buying purses for the same price as you're buying fly rods. Then you both have a problem.
Well, I hope not. Maybe she doesn't tell me what the purse costs, and I don't tell what the fly rods
There
cost.
you go. That's why you stay married.
There you go. That's good. Well, Eric, so you got into fly fishing there, or back into kind of fly fishing in college, like you said. But I know after college, you also spent some time doing some professional baseball. And then where did it kind of transition out of baseball into what was next?
Well, one, I got married, and so I was in the Yankees organization, and this was in the mid-90s during their dynasty run, and a guy named Bernie Williams played the same position as I did, center field, which means you never saw me on TV, right? So part of it is, it's the right place at the right time, but we had so many great players, right? So we were just stockpiled because Mr. Steinbrenner back in those days when he was alive, he bought superstars, right? And so it was, so I rolled the dice. I went out on the trade market. I didn't get re-signed by another team. And I look back and say, man, I wish I would have kept my mouth shut. But, I'm 24 and you really need to be in the big leagues by 26. So I felt like I was going to take a risk. But so I get released, take my release. I don't get re-signed, and I'm getting married that fall. And so come July, August, I'm like, oh no, I might have to actually get a real job because I'm going to get married and I've got to support a family. And so I ended up working through some family relationships on my wife's side. It's funny, like I'm interviewing with all of these great companies, US Steel, PNC Bank, and they're like, I double majored in accounting and pre-law, but I don't know if I learned a thing. I was playing baseball, and like I graduated with honors, but like I honestly can't remember anything that I learned. And so I'm like, I said, hey, I know I'm a leader. I work hard. I think I'm pretty good with people, and I win. Right. So can you give me a management job? And they were like, yeah, no, you've got no experience and you've been playing baseball and you don't want to be an accountant. So we're not sure what to do with you. So after I finally landed a job, it was with AT&T. My wife is from the Pittsburgh area, and she had a job. She was 2 years younger than me. So while I was playing baseball, she was finishing school. And so she landed a job with a great PR firm in Pittsburgh. And so I'm like, well, great. One of us has got to work. And so I actually didn't have a job until a month after we were married, but I signed on with AT&T in their business to business market. I worked with some of the global accounts. And what's interesting, because I was interviewing with all of these companies and said, I basically have nothing, no experience to offer you, but I'll work hard. But then with AT&T, the big boss of that market, his son was a 15-year-old baseball phenom. And so my 45-minute interview consisted of me giving dad a couple baseball drills that we did with the Yankees that he could do with his son. And 3 days later, I was working. So I learned something about sales and meeting people where they're at. That moment. So so I did that for 3 years. And then while I was playing professional baseball, an organization called Athletes in Action, which is part of Crew, which is back then was Campus Crusade for Christ.
Oh yeah, we had Campus Crusade for Christ. Yeah, bring back the memories.
Yeah, and so those guys were my chaplains while I was playing pro ball, and AIA did a lot of chaplaincy work with the Major League Baseball. And so it just kept coming back in my mind. AIA, I love those guys. I always thought someday I would love to be involved with this ministry, but someday meant, retiring from MLB Hall of Fame. That's God's business. I wanted to stay humble. And so my wife comes home from work. Again, we're married 3 years. We're living in Pittsburgh, just starting our life. And we kind of have these two great careers. We're making more money than our parents did. And I said, Sue, this is crazy, but I think God's calling us on staff with AIA. She goes, that's so weird. I was going to tell you the same thing when I got home. And so like the hair stands up on the neck. We make a few phone calls. Their two biggest needs in the ministry was in the baseball ministry. It was the fastest growing sports teams ministry, sending teams all over the world. And in their PR and marketing department, which was my wife's degree, she was working at a PR firm. They were like, who are you again? And I said, we're the next people coming on staff, and hung up the phone, and we transitioned out of careers, started raising support, and that shifted our trajectory into vocational ministry, starting with Athletes in Action, missions, and all of that. And then later into the church side of ministry, where I spent 20 years or so pastoring churches in Ohio and Chicago, where we're at now.
So that's really cool, and it's such a great story, and thank you for sharing it and being transparent with it. So you started in ministry, you became pastor and working in church ministry, pastoring churches, as you said, all in Ohio and Chicago, and then you found yourself with Altar. Tell us a little bit about the Altar fly fishing story. First of all, if you will, tell us what exactly, in your own words, what is Altar fly fishing? And then where did the story, or how did it get its start?
Yeah, so we're a little unusual. People don't know quite what to do with us in the fly fishing world, although we've grown so many great relationships. We're part of the industry. We host fishing trips / retreats all over the country. We do retreats for men, women. I have a heart for leaders, so we're doing more with marketplace leaders. A lot of work with pastors, especially pastors in burnout or just needing some self-care, soul care. And somehow we got into this niche doing resilience training with active duty Navy SEALs and personnel from Navy Special Warfare, which is just wild, right? You can't make this stuff up. Yeah. So we give people the fishing trip experience, except we help people read the waters of life to understand, and we help bring clarity of how am I actually doing in key areas of life, and help people then discern and write plans after the trip to say, if the needle needs to move in some areas, how can we write a plan or help people actually move those needles so they grow healthier, whether it's in their faith life, whether it's in their relationships, mental, physically, etc. I'm also a leadership coach, a life coach, soul care coach. And so our team that we've assembled is really equipped. The trip is part one, and you can do lots of great retreats with people out there, and I'd encourage you to do that. But if you want to do a great retreat and actually see some life change or positive stuff come in life, like this is where we really enter the market and what we do. And we want to hang with people for the next 6 months, the next year after the retreat, just helping them live into those things that they discern, and we help them plan. So that's what Altar does. We have the Christian faith angle on things, but I'd say it's I don't know if bigger than that is the right word. It's really a chance to let the RPMs come down, assess life, and start moving towards flourishing and thriving in the most important areas of life, and then seeing how the ripples of your life, your influence flow then into your families, your workplace, etc. So that's what we do. Where did it all start? I dropped my son off at his volleyball practice. So I would always go to this little kind of dive bar pub, hide in a corner. I'd pull up my laptop, and usually, I was on staff at the church at this time. So I would do work, return emails, and I just heard God say, pull out your laptop and start typing. And 6 pages later, what would become Altar fly fishing just kind of flowed out of that experience. And I was like, wow, that would be pretty awesome. I didn't know what to do with it. I called a couple friends who I trusted and just kind of vomited these 6 pages on them. And then it was crazy. Like relationships, connections over the next month just happened rapidly. And I connect with Jason Randall, and some of your listeners may know. He's like one of the gurus in the Euro technique, tight line technique. He lives near me, which is wild because no trout guru lives anywhere near Chicago. And he said, Eric, you need to do one of these trips, and I'm going to help you. This was like literally just weeks after I wrote out these pages. I said, Jason, he goes, send me some brochures. I'm speaking at all these clubs, do a trip. I'll help you fill it. I said, Jason, I don't have brochures. I said, I have an idea. I was going to spend the next 6 months or a year doing the market research, like to be responsible. Like maybe this is already happening all over the place. And I joined someone else, or he goes, I will save you a year. No one is doing what you're doing at the depth and level you're talking about. He goes, you need to do a trip and I'm going to help you do it. So send me some brochures. And I'm like, yeah, there's still the problem. He goes, well, send me something. So I like literally just created, I didn't have anything, no logo. I just like put some things on. And so we did a trip 5 months later, and that was the birth of Altar. And from that point, we're a nonprofit organization. So we worked on our 501c3, got that 5 years ago, and it just started exploding to the point where I left staff at the church that I was with a year ago, January, and doing Altar full time. And we're doing 14 trips/retreats this year, and starting to plan 24 and 25 because we have a lot of people, a variety of groups interested in doing more stuff with us.
So I wanted to take a second and ask, I know you have one follow-up question. You've got 14 trips this year.
Mm-hmm.
I know you can go on your website, which we're going to make sure everybody sees that in our show notes and talk about it here in a minute, where to find them. But it sounds like you're also doing some things for maybe if an entire, I don't know, like it sounds like you're maybe an entire staff or somebody wants to do a trip just for people that maybe they already know, or are some of your trips like, I come as a leader and somebody from, Texas comes a leader, and it's like a mix of people, or do you do some groups?
A combination. So what's been surprising, I didn't anticipate, but we have more and more, we're just calling them private trips, where we've got one of my friends say, hey, I want to pull 10 of my buddies together and do a trip. Can we just book a whole week? Or we're working now with some church denominations. We've got CEOs of companies saying, hey, I want to bring my board or my executive leadership. And so we're doing a variety of things. And so probably 75% are people saying like, hey, we've got a group that we want to bring, some men's groups from churches and so forth. But we always want to have a handful of trips that are just totally open, that anyone can come. Because actually I've got friends and people here in Chicago to say, hey, we want to do a trip. And I'm like, we've got 2 slots on this date and 3 slots on that date, but hey, 2024, 2025, we can like slide you in. So I didn't anticipate that, but it's, I guess that's a good problem to have if you're in, wanting to fill trips.
So tell us a little bit what takes place on these trips.
Yeah, so typically we kick things off. It's a Wednesday to Sunday, so we kick things off Wednesday night with a dinner, and so usually 3 to 5 people show up. And it's funny, people say, "So are we camping?" And I'm like, I just turned 50, and I'm having aches and pains everywhere. No, we're not camping. We stay in nice places. One of my good friends, he's a high-end chef, just retired, and he's now our altar chef. He's donating all of his time. So we bring a chef in, like we eat well, we rest well. So we kick things off with dinner, kind of get the lay of the land. And so we want to help people, one, read the waters of life. That's always a part of every retreat. And then we pick a theme or some other teaching and reflection topics for our retreats. So last year we focused on resilience. How do you build a resilient life? Resilience is something you have to draw upon when you need it. Are you living the kind of life that's actually filling that bucket so when you need it, it's there? So what are the tips, the tools to do that? This year we're talking about rhythm and the rhythm of life, and what's the relationship between work and rest. And we've got some creative ideas that might blow people's mind to say like, wow, I never thought of it like that before. But this is a hot topic, just not in the Christian world. They would say like Sabbath, right? Like you should stop for a day. But you look at the different sciences, especially psychology, and there's some books and articles coming out. They're saying like, hey, do you know what? People need to stop, once a week or every now and then. And I'm like, well, yeah, we've known that forever. We aren't doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
that's good.
So that's our focus for this year. And so we want to help people live in life-giving rhythms for them and their families. So that'll be the focus. And, we've got ideas for, future years. So then that's when, so we kind of get the lay of the land Wednesday night. And then Thursday we wake up, have a good breakfast, a little teaching time. But we always give people personal reflection time, because there's something about being in the mountains, being away, the RPMs come down. So we don't want to miss the opportunity for people just have some time to think, pray if they want, reflect, but start putting, the pen to paper and working some things out in their life. And then by 10:30, like, it's like, hey, make sure you've got your gear. We're fishing for the rest of the day. We come back, have some appetizers, let everyone clean up, a good dinner. And then we do a recap on the day, everything from what we learned, reflected on, stories from the stream, which are always entertaining.
Always.
But it's amazing, like what people bring, around the huddle. And it's I just love creating environments that are safe where people can share and have a good time and relax. And so I think that's one of the things we do really well, is just create those kinds of environments. And so we jump in and we kind of hit repeat Thursday, Friday, Saturday, kind of with that same thing, kind of on a journey moving towards. And then by Saturday night, people have really come to some clarity points for themselves and their own life and families or work or whatever it may be, on what could or should be next. And that's where we say, okay, so let's actually think about what are those waypoints? How do we help you go from where you're at to where you desire to be? And so our team, walks alongside people, and we have a heart for pastors, probably 40 and next year, maybe even 50% of what we do is working with, when I say pastors, people in vocational ministry. So staff or nonprofits. But we don't make it too optional. We're going to journey with you, because we believe your influence in the space you're in matters hugely to people. And 1,200 to 1,500 pastors a month are exiting the ministry, not just their churches, the ministry. So I don't think we want to wake up and see a churchless America. That's not going to be good for anybody. So we're committed to changing the story and statistics of pastors in America. And what's fun is we actually now have the data coming back that I think we're doing that. So that's another big focus. So yeah, Sunday morning we end with another good breakfast and some last final words, but people are driving back home, heading to the airport to fly home. So, and then Monday morning's waiting for you.
I love it. Well, I think, first of all, I just want to speak to the fact, I think it's incredible what you're doing. I love your heart for pastors. I too feel the same way, being in ministry and seeing that all too frequently of the burnout, especially that's taken place over the last 2 or 3 years, and the amount of people just leaving the ministry because of all kinds of different reasons, and a lot of it being because they wore themselves out. They ran themselves too hard. And then when the world kind of came collapsing down, it made things 10 times worse. And so I really appreciate what you guys are doing. And I just want to thank you for that. I also want to thank you for the fact that you're doing retreats that also provide that follow-up. I think that is insanely important. Because I think a lot of times we go, I've had the opportunity to go on a few retreats similar to what you guys do, one fly fishing, one not fly fishing related. You have these mountaintop experiences, but then you come home and, like you just said, Monday's waiting on you. And it's almost like sometimes when you come back from these things, that Monday is always the worst Monday, because it just it seems like everything's just waiting on you to get back. So I think it's incredible what you guys are doing to be able to take the time to follow up with these people that are on your retreat. You're not just providing a cool experience, you're actually trying to influence life change. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. And you watch how quickly relationships, bonds form around the people that are fishing together. So this year, for the first time, we're going to have a 6 to 8 week kind of group experience. We're going to keep the group together and say, like, here's part 2 to the retreat, right? So it'll be more applicational of how do you actually get some of these rhythms working in your life. And so I think people appreciate, one, staying together for a little longer because they just started these relationships, but it'll also help forge hopefully some of the stuff that they desire to stick, it'll actually stick.
I wanted to ask one question. So I got on your website. You can see all your trips there, as everybody can do. But let's just take an example trip like the Driftless Men trip in September. Do you limit that to a number of spots? And is there a certain, because you like to keep those groups to somewhat, a certain number, kind of help for what you're talking about with the continuity of the community of the weekend or the week?
Yeah, it really depends on the location of where we're at. If we have a bigger group, we'll probably break it into smaller groups for discussion time. So it's a combination of large group, small group. But most places it's, 8 to 12 is the right size. And that's the same way in the driftless area as well. Sometimes we partner with some of the other lodges and outfitters that are at these fly fishing shows. We have relationships there. Sometimes we're using the VRBOs and, grouping stuff together. We always have a base camp house or place, and then, we'll sleep people. And sometimes we have people that say, hey, I've got a cabin that sleeps X and, we just want to donate it, which is huge for us because that helps us bring the cost down. We want this to be accessible to people. So it really matters where we're at and kind of the situation.
It's really cool. So I want to ask you, Eric, why do you think these retreats, because you could do retreats like this based on a lot of different things, you could all kinds of different hobbies, all kinds of different things. Why do you think fly fishing is so beneficial to these types of retreats?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll answer that in a couple different ways. One, fly fishing, at least for me, and you guys will probably resonate, it's a different kind of experience because you're so connected into what's happening. If you're waiting, like you're in the stream, you feel the cool water, like you can feel it pushing against you. You're casting a fly rod. You've got usually we say trout live in beautiful places, right? So you're just in these majestic settings and you're so connected into what's happening. I think it transports people to a different place. If you want to put the theological spin on it, Psalm 19 says the heavens declare the glory of God. Like creation or nature speaks, like it has an impact on us. And you can dig into science, like they're talking about positive ions that come out of rushing water and other, so it's like, I just say, like, yeah, it works when you get people in those environments. Something different happens. Like you have access to different parts of people's lives. They have access to different parts of their life. People say, like, well, my church is in the river. Well, why is that? Because there's this serenity, there's this peace, there's something else happening with people. So one, I just love the sport and I love catching fish, big fish, the uncatchable fish. Like I'll catch them all. Like I just love it. But when I zoom out, I'm like, wow, I'm different when I'm in the stream or come out of the stream. And so to bring that piece with intentionality on the things that we most desire and want, that we want in life, that some of the pain points of life, when you bring those things together, like it has the opportunity to bring some powerful clarity to people. And so they get the experience, the adventure, all of that. And they also get some real takeaways or meaningful stuff. Like I don't know of a better kind of partnership between what we do and fly fishing coming together. That's why we say we're about merging faith and fly fishing into a common stream. So
I love that. And I mean, I couldn't agree with you more for those reasons of why fly fishing is so impactful and why it could be used for something like this. It's reflective in nature. It gives us opportunities when we're sitting out in nature, like you just said, to experience God in a very special way. And I think it allows for us to also slow our minds down a little bit and actually take some time to think about the things that really do matter. And so I appreciate what you guys are doing. I can't say enough about it. I love it.
We wanted to ask, and just before we're going to talk some more about, you personally and being a man of faith and a father in the second half of the episode. But if people may want to be involved, I know we talked about this when we had dinner that night in Virginia. So I know you may still have some spots open for this year's trips.
Yep.
And those can be found on your website. But maybe you want to be involved another way. There's also a way to do that as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So we always, we talk about, you have the big three, you have food, lodging, and guiding. And so I would say that the biggest opportunities or needs we have are people that, I mean, we've probably had 6 different people at the Denver show say, hey, I'm a guide. Here's where I live. If you're doing anything in our area, let me know. I would love to come volunteer or help. So that helps. One, it helps us offset costs, and it involves people in what we're doing. If people have property, cabins, houses, or something that they want to donate or use for the ministry or what we're doing, that's another huge thing. And then you just have, it could be food help, it could just be helping, or boots on the ground. Like we hope to go to some new places, but we don't always know the ins and outs of those places. People that will kind of be our chaperones or our go-to people to say, okay, if we're going to bring a trip here, so where are we going to get groceries? Where are we going to, like they can help us do that. So I'd just say, if you have a heart for this kind of ministry, these kind of trips, and you've got energy, just reach out on our website and kind of let us know your interest. And we track all of this stuff, so we by area, by types of volunteering that people want to do. And I mean, it's a great joy to make that phone call or send that email to say, hey, we're coming to you if you still want to help. And just, I mean, it's just, people get so excited, and that's part of it too. When you bring that kind of enthusiasm into a trip, like people just authentically love to serve and volunteer, like that has an impact.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people were marked by what we love to do is just love and serve people. So we don't let people wash a dish. Like, we bring the food to them, we take their plates, especially pastors who are usually the ones doing this. Like, we've had people tear up, like, because they're just not used to being loved and served in that way. And so that's just our joy to do those kinds of things for people. And it takes people to create that environment and to do that. So,
well, before we take a break, I want to ask you this: if you can, is there a story that just stands out to you from one of the altar experiences? Obviously can't share any names and stuff like that, but if you were to share one story from one of your retreats, which one would you share?
golly, just one.
If you can narrow it down.
So we had this was on one of our pastor trips, and we theme everything around the soul. We say the soul of a man, the soul of a woman, the soul of a leader, the soul of a pastor. So we just think, if you don't get the center right and thriving and growing, nothing else is going to work around it. But this was one of our pastor trips, and we had Big Nate and Little Nate, because they were both named Nate, and one guy was like 6'6" and the other one was like 5 foot something. So it was very easy. But Big Nate did not look well when he arrived on Wednesday. He put his stuff in his room. Some of the other participants came to me and said, we think something's wrong with this guy. Like, we don't know if he has COVID or what. Like, we're not sure we want to sleep with him. He looks sick. It's like, you need to do something. And I'm like, okay. So I pulled Big Nate out on this great porch at this hunting cabin that a guy donated for us to use. It sleeps like 14, but he has this amazing porch. And I just was talking to him, and Big Nate was fine. Like, he was so fatigued, burned out, worn out from life, from family, all kinds of stuff going on in his church. As a leader, he was stressed out. Like, he looked like he was just not in a good place. I said, okay, so let's go eat dinner. And over the next few days, we have this picture of Big Nate kind of in a group, but he's holding this fish. I mean, his smile was touching each of his ears. Like, it was so big, and like life had come back in his eyes. And all of these, everyone on the trip, and this is what so many of these pastors talked about. They said, we just experienced resurrection. Like, this guy was dead and now he's alive again. And it marked them. And what Nate said was, because you know what, I found hope. Because he was thinking, I got to leave ministry or the church, and I hate to do that. I love it, but if I leave, I can be happy. If I stay in, I'll be miserable for the rest of my life. And I was like, whoa, like there's a whole lot of room in between there. But it starts with, are you okay? Like, let's get you healthy. And so he's doing well. And, but it was just, and it's funny, it's just, you're talking 4 or 5 days, the transformation that happens. And, there's no magic wand we wave, but I think it's the combination of what we do on the fishing side, some intentional conversation, giving people space just to do business with themselves or with God. All of that together, it just works. And so we have many stories like that, but to have that conversation, to see his face, how he looked, and then how he ended the retreat, like we all can just see that like crystal. It's amazing.
That's special.
Too cool. What a cool story.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to take a little break, and we're going to come back and let Eric tell us all about his life as a father. And I'm sure give him a chance to brag about his kids, and then also maybe talk about some cool adventures with them in the outdoors and on the water. So we'll be right back.
All right.
We're back with Mr. Eric Camfield from Altar Fly Fishing. And Eric, we appreciate you taking the time tonight. We wanted to take this second half of our show to let you speak a little bit to, you spoke about your journey from professional athletics into the ministry and now into the founder of Altar Fly Fishing. And how has that been as a father, showing your 2 children, that journey, and also them kind of experiencing that journey with you through ministry, and hopefully getting them outside and doing some of this stuff you're talking about with the healing from the outside in the water?
Yeah, the fact that I made this transition when they were late high school or just in college, they got to watch it more through young adult eyes.
Sure, yeah.
And so one of the things I think we've tried to build as a family, like we are just each other's biggest fans and champions. And so to watch them, their encouragement, we'll get a new donor, with the ministry. And I just texted my daughter, I had lunch with a guy today, and he's going to support us. And she's like, Dad, that's awesome. Like, way to go. And I'm like, man, it makes you feel good. Like when your daughter's like building.
Sure.
So I think it's, cause it was funny when we started Altar, I thought it would just be this little side thing. Cause I love the fish. I love the outdoors, and I love gathering around men, getting people away. And I thought, wow, this is great. Like I can cash in a couple of vacation days or a couple of weeks each year and just do these Altar trips. And then it started to grow, and I was like, man, I've got a problem. Right. And then it was like, I think I need to maybe step into this full time. And that's when I got my wife's attention. She goes, wait, you're doing what? She goes, we have 2 kids in college. And I said, what a great opportunity for the Lord to provide. She goes, I hope you're relying on more than that. I was like, well, and she's on staff with our church, so she's an amazing leader herself. And, but I believe like it was scary, and as a pastor, like I really enjoy preaching on faith. I love for the 2 of you guys to step out in faith, but then when you do it for yourself, you're like, man, this is hard.
Yeah.
And you gotta trust, and it's not easy. And but I would just say we've been taken care of every step of the way, and whether it's people or provision or the things we need for Altar's organization as it grows, like it's just been provided every step of the way. So I have confidence, but it doesn't mean it's easy. And it stretches you. And I'd probably, if I had to admit, I'd like to be comfortable more than I like being stretched. But when you're stretched, that's where the good stuff is. So, so it's been, I hope it's an example to my kids, because, one of the things we know about kids, they're going to catch a lot more than what they hear from us. And so, you try your best to model, but, they're watching all of it. We interview every day. But I think this has been a good story for my kids to say, this is what it looks like when you're passionate about something, when you feel you're being called or led to it, and to be courageous enough to step out and to trust. I hope that puts something in them that they'll carry forward.
For sure. Well, and you don't build that just when they get college age. I mean, that starts when they're young, being able to have those, like you were saying, they catch a lot more than they hear. I love that. I think that's a good reminder and it's a good dad tip of the week.
That's what I was just
think.
thinking. A little
So,
dad tip of the
little
week
dad
thrown in
right
there.
They catch a lot more than they hear. That's really good.
On the water too.
That's very true. Yeah.
Sometimes we catch a lot more tips from
I didn't know there's dad jokes on this podcast too. So
oh yeah, we got a few.
No, but I mean, think about it on the water.
I agree.
You do learn sometimes a lot more from, our recent guest talked about learning from watching someone fly fish, not so much being instructed. So it's a great, and sometimes our kids can do the same thing.
Absolutely. So you guys obviously have a pretty great family dynamic. That, like I said, that doesn't just happen when you're taking a big step in faith. It's probably something you guys have built over time. Has fly fishing been a part of their life at all? Have you had opportunities to get them on the water? Has it kind of been more just your thing?
A combination. I would say they're not diehard anglers, but if I invite them, they would go. It's tough when you don't do it all the time because you got to tie the knots, right? I mean, there's a lot to it. But I remember they were maybe middle school, early high school, and we would do these adventures. Usually, like when my wife has something going on, like it's a dad adventure, and then she's like, "Why are you doing these adventures without me?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know, because you're busy, and then got to do something with the kids." And so, but we would go to the driftless region, like we would camp, and it's funny listening to kids tell these stories. So, we had this kind of a 3-4 man tent, and they brought their sleeping bags, and I didn't tell them, like, I brought an air mattress, and so this air mattress was actually bigger than I thought, so it filled up like 2/3 the tent. So I'm on the air mattress, and they're like squished against the side of the tent, sleeping in their sleeping bags. And my wife is like, she goes, "You're a horrible dad." Like, I was like, they loved it, and
they probably
don't know that we love it. So we just have these stories, but it's funny, like I was watching my son, who just was doing everything, like he was executing everything so well by the book, and he just was not catching anything. And my daughter, they're two very different. My son he's a little more sensitive, kind of tunes into people, caring. My daughter is like, "I will take you down, get out of my way," kind of that leader type.
Talk to you after the show, please, about how to handle those two personalities. That's exactly my two children.
Wait until they're 19 and 20. That's
oh boy.
So they both turned out awesome. But my daughter, like, I don't even think she's getting a bite. Like she probably bumps a rock or hits a piece of moss, and she's got this violent hook set. And I know she's snagging a fish that's like 10 feet away on the other side of the stream. Right. She's like, "I got another one, Clay." So he's getting none, like she's rubbing it in, and but I always tell him, I said, "Hey, you can set the rod down at any point because there's a lot more going on than just fishing. Like you're in a beautiful place. And if you want to read, if you want to listen to the water, whatever you want to do." So we have fun. It's definitely a bonding time. And I think that's, again, it's getting away from the distractions. And you just got this one-on-one time it's just in a different space, whether conversations are happening or not. Like it's just quality time that's what kids talk about, years later.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we think about our own experiences with our own dad. And I think about experiences now with my own kids. They're not talking about the stuff we've got them or anything like that. They're way more excited about my oldest son, Reed. He's 6 right now, and he told me the other day when he turns 12, he wants to go on an airplane with dad and go fly fishing. So, like, I'm pretty sure about that. I already told him
that's an easy yes.
We're saving for that trip already.
When he's
12. So you're using your kid to get some more fly fishing in.
I'm not. That's one way to look at it. But maybe my wife won't listen to this episode.
Dad's on the fly has led to, hey, we got to take the kids fishing, so we have some things to talk about on the show. We gotta hang out with Eric, and so we can have some people to talk to. It just leads us into more things.
But
for sure.
I think you're right, Eric. That time on the water, it really is it's priceless. I mean, we can't really put a price on that. And I feel like you probably had to be pretty intentional. I mean, I don't think Chicago is really known for their fly fishing water. So I'm sure, like, to do that with your family, you had to be pretty intentional about trying to pursue time outside with your kids.
Yeah, there's some decent smallmouth around here, but I mean, we're actually positioned well because you've got, at least from where I'm at, in the western suburbs, about 4 hours, and you're in the heart of the driftless region, which is one of the nation's best trout fisheries. That's, I don't know if it's fortunately or unfortunately starting to get noticed and popular, but it's amazing. But then you go the other way 4 or 5 hours and you're into Michigan. So you got that, but you do neither one of those on the way home from work. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So you do have to be intentional, and it causes some time away. But for me, that's been good. Like, I'm a person that has to unplug, or like, I just need some space and time, not an hour, but a day or 2 days is really good for me. So it's been, I'm not bagging Chicago, but as often as I can get out of here,
You're out.
fish and get in nature is a good thing for me.
You mentioned those stories, and Caleb said something that just made me. I think you could probably echo. Through those stories of sleeping on an air mattress or in the corner of a tent, and somebody catching fish, somebody not. Sometimes we forget. Sometimes the fish stories don't ever have a lot to do with some big fish or some. Well, it's those little things that kids remember, like what you're saying. Like, remember that time? They'll tell that story forever. Remember when Dad slept on the cup? And we were stuck up. And that's what's so cool. As we continue in what we do at Dads on the Fly, encouraging dads and encouraging each other and learning from folks like you and other people we have on the show, that it's those memories, man, that just mean so much to what you're doing and that legacy that you're leaving. Intentional time with your kids. And so I just want to appreciate you saying that. And I'm sure you've got tons of other stories, but how does what is the as your kids are in a different kind of area of their life, I think that's so cool that they're your biggest cheerleaders. I mean, think about that in terms of just building that in a family. I think that's a tip I'll take from what you just said. Our kids are younger, but to build that up as let's be each other's cheerleaders, regardless of what we're doing.
Yeah. I remember there's an equation. It's from one of the large churches in America, but out of their family ministry. But they say, love over time is a powerful equation, right? And so you don't always, when we get so into the moment of stuff, and maybe it's discipline or there's problems or whatever it is, and we can get so sucked in. But if you can just zoom out and say consistent love over time, we don't do it perfectly every time, but if we can be consistent just to build safe, loving relationships, keep moving toward each other, take advantage of the opportunities you have. When you accumulate that over years and years and years, it does instill something in children that I think is hugely needed today, because families are pretty fragmented and go in a lot of different directions, and travel this, and everything's elite, and it's busy, and after school stuff. So I think whenever we have the opportunity just to be present with one another, one of the things we valued is the dinner table. And I'm sure my kids are scarred, but I guarantee you the dinner table is going to be sacred space. Like, that's just a place where we connect. Food is kind of a bonding thing for our family. I love to cook. And so, there's no phones at the table. There's no screwing around at the table. And, but now that they're older, like, we have great conversations, and I'm curious to see if they have kids and families, like, what does the table as a centerpiece? But, I manipulated my schedule. Like, we tried to have dinner more often than not as a family, even, and I had athletic kids and travel everything. But we really worked hard to honor we're going to eat dinner as a family, just as at least one place where we knew we would connect. And so, every family is different, but I think you've got to find a couple stakes that you put in the ground and say, this is where us becomes us.
I love that. I couldn't agree more with that. You said something that reminded me of something. I think we had maybe even a guest say this recently, or I heard it from somewhere, talking about that time over time and how much it matters. And I think they said, everybody's always trying to chase, like, we need quality time. We need quality time. We need quality time. But actually, quality time with your kids only takes place after a quantity has been built up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it takes time over time to actually get into that quality time. And I think that's a good reminder. And I love your statement about planting some stakes in the ground and deciding, hey, this is going to be us. This is what we're going to experience. Do you think your experience raising your kids and being intentional like that has helped lead you to being the founder of Altar, like seeing the importance of that, like being outside, what that meant to your kids? Did that help you in your own faith journey? lead you towards wanting to point other people to that? Is that kind of maybe how Altar kind of comes back full circle into this whole thing?
Yeah, I think perhaps with my kids, like we've always, my wife grew up on 300 acres in Western Pennsylvania, so it's just called the farm. So we love on vacations, we love to hike, although we've learned there's 4 of us in our family. We all would vacation very differently. Like this was the eureka moment with you have a 19, 20, 21-year-old and mom and dad like having honest conversations. My daughter wants to be at the beach, my wife wants to hike and do adventures. Like I just want to chill because I'm usually I need to just decompress, and my son is like, I don't want to go on vacation with any of you. I'd rather just like stay at home and play my guitar. And so it was funny, like just that realization. But yeah, but I've just watched over the years, whenever you get people away, whether it's your family, whether it's, I've done a lot of that in ministry over the years, but I mean, it could just be guys or dudes like going away and doing like different kinds of bonds happen. Like it's just good for relationships. And I just think, like I said, there's something powerful about creation and nature when you bring that element in, especially I'd say over the last 10 or 15 or 20 years, just that the pace of life has increased, how technology has wrapped itself around us. Like we have to intentionally find space where we aren't engaged, that we can, it's funny. I remember, and I hope this isn't too churchy, but like I was, we were at a fairly large church here in Chicago where I pastor, but so every now and then the server would go down. Mm-hmm. Right. And so now the email doesn't work, and like everyone's looking at each other's like, what do we do? And I'm like, what if we actually like picked up the phone, called somebody, and like met someone at a coffee shop? Like, what if we were with people and
actually pastored, right? Yeah, I get it.
And I was like, and you don't realize it until all of a sudden, like that rhythm frustrates itself. It's like, oh wait, maybe there's some good things or even better things that sometimes we don't always get to because we're doing other stuff. So anyway, I love the longer pauses. I love getting people away. And I've just seen the impact it's had on them when we do that.
Yeah, I love that. I'm currently reading John Eldridge's book, Resilient. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it or not, but he talks about that, of how we've got to take time to actually, and I think you were speaking to this earlier. We've got to take time to replenish those reserves, because there's no warning when those reserves are out.
Yeah.
If we're not constantly replenishing those reserves, getting away, getting time, getting along, in our case, getting along with God, that reserve goes out and then we burn out. And there's not usually a lot of warning signals. We're I think he describes it as like, we're a lot like camels in that, like we're resilient to a point, and then all of a sudden we're just done. That breaking point. And, so I think it's important, like you were saying, to get away, replenish those reserves. It's extremely important.
So before we wrap this up, Eric, got one more question, but we want to give everybody just an opportunity, and it's pretty simple. Altarflyfishing.com, correct?
.org.
.org. Okay. Altarflyfishing.
ALTAR, right? Like you're gonna live your life as an altar, sacrifice for the sake of others. So yeah, altarflyfishing.org.
And Altarflyfishing on Instagram.
Altarflyfishing Adventures.
Okay, Altarflyfishing Adventures on Instagram, and you can find about all your trips, all the information on how to donate, like you've talked about, how to be involved in your ministry and the awesome stuff that you guys are doing. But one thing I wanted to ask before we go is, we have a lot of fathers that listen to our show, a lot of guys, and tell them, I think I can already kind of answer it from the episode, but I think it's perfect for a dad to go on one of these trips, or it would be a perfect opportunity for a dad maybe who's super busy to get away and spend some time recharging. So how do you see it being just a perfect opportunity for them?
So I would say if you're a man or a father, just you getting away to recalibrate, like your life speaks and it leaks, right? So when you're healthy, it makes a difference on the whole family, your marriage, your kids. And especially when you get clarity or focus and you can start moving intentionally in some areas, like, the sociology is powerfully speaks to this. When a shift in dad happens, it impacts exponentially the family. So I'd say it's good for you. And then, we do some father-son stuff. There's all kinds of things you can do as fathers and sons, or with your daughters. Take advantage of some of those times, and you have to fight for it. I mean, kids are busy, life is busy, but I would say, make the necessary sacrifices of time, finances, and maybe missing some games or whatever it is, because your kids will never be mad at you at that in the long haul. That's what they're gonna talk about, and those kinds of memories. And again, when you bring intentionality around it, we do some father-son trips. We're going to do another one next year. But just having dads speak into the lives of their sons or their daughters. I mean, we just don't do that. Most people don't do that on a daily basis. But when we create that space, we're sharing an adventure, and then just these words of love and encouragement and challenge and all of these good things come. Like, a kid will remember that for the rest of their life, and it'll shape them likely what they do as mothers or fathers down the road. So it doesn't seem like much, but man, it is huge. So I'd say to all the dads out there, do it for yourself and do it with your kids.
Love it. Well, Eric, we can't thank you enough. Thanks for taking time out of your day to spend some time with us. You're a Dads on the Fly, and I know this has been impactful for a lot of dads, hopefully listening. I encourage them to go check out Altary Fly Fishing. And Joshua, anything before we wrap this up?
I just appreciate your time, buddy.
Yeah, thank you guys. Love what you're doing. Keep doing it.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks everyone for listening to this conversation with Mr. Eric Camfield of Altary Fly Fishing. And until next time, tight lines.